I'm Thomas Crockett, and I'm going to be doing a chapter review for Chapter 11 of our textbook, Leadership: A Communication Perspective. The title of our chapter is Ethical Leadership and Followership, and the opening quote is, "Most people wish to be good, but not all of the time," which I thought was interesting. A quick overview for kind of the key points that we're going to be reading about in the chapter and some things that you should try to really focus on and take away with you are the importance of ethics, and then the ethical challenges of leadership, casting light or shadow, and then within that, we talk about the challenge of information management, the challenge of responsibility, the challenge of power, the challenge of privilege, the challenge of loyalty, and the challenge of consistency. We then talk about the components of ethical behavior and ethical perspectives like Kant's categorical imperative, um, utilitarianism, justice as fairness, virtue ethics, altruism, leaders as servants, and then move into meeting the ethical challenges of followership. And then we talk about servant followership and courageous followership. First thing I want to talk about is the challenge of information management. Leaders typically have access to more information than the followers do. They participate in decision-making groups, receive financial data, keep personnel files, network with managers from other units, and so on, that kind of stuff. When it comes to the challenge of information management, leaders cast more shadow than light when they do things like lie, particularly for selfish ends, use information solely for personal benefit, deny having knowledge that is in their possession, gather data in a way that violates privacy rights, withhold information that followers legitimately need, share information with the wrong people, put followers in moral binds by insisting that they withhold information that others have the right to know. There's a certain challenge of responsibility that comes with being a leader. Followers are largely responsible for their own actions, but leaders are held accountable for those actions because they lead those people. They're kind of in charge of everything that they do. So if they mess up, it's more looked on and frowned upon towards the leader because they're supposed to be the person who makes sure that they don't mess up. This challenge is particularly important given the fact that leaders set the ethical tone for the entire organization. The commitment of senior level executives determines whether or not a corporation takes its moral responsibility seriously. There are some general expectations of leaders, especially responsible leaders. They acknowledge and try to correct ethical problems. They admit that they have duties to followers. They promote ethical standards and behaviors. They take responsibility for the consequences of their orders and actions. They take responsible steps to prevent crimes and other abuses by followers. And finally, they hold themselves to the same standards as their followers. When it comes to the challenge of power, a leader must decide when to employ power, which types of power to use, and how much power he or she wishes to exert over followers. These decisions have moral implications. It is ethical, for instance, to use power to pursue personal objectives as well as organizational goals. Is it ethical to dominate followers and demand action, or should power be distributed? Is it ethical for a leader to demand compliance when a follower has a moral objection to the leader's request? All of these things are questions that need to be asked when trying to deal with, the amount of power that you want to exert. Now, I want to move on to the chapter takeaways, and it talks about standards for moral judgment and how they are critical to the practice of leadership because unethical leaders can do significant damage to groups, organizations, and societies. And then it talks about when you take on the role of the leader, you take on ethical challenges in addition to a set of tasks and expectations. The moral demands of the leadership role include issues related to truthfulness and the release and collection of information, and also the extent of responsibility for the actions of followers, also the use of power, and then accumulation of social and material rewards. So all those things are things that you need to think about. Thanks for listening.